guys, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of artbyrow.com and of course this channel. I'm glad you're here today and I really hope you enjoy this video of drawing some mushroom people. So I am going to show you one way to draw these in hopes that it'll get you started, get some juices flowing, some inspiration, motivation to do your own drawings. If you like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to get notified for future videos. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go on over to the art studio and get started on today's drawing. Today we're going to be drawing some mushroom people. These guys are so cute and so much fun to draw, and there are literally thousands of different ways that you could draw them. So I'm going to show you just one of those ways today. There's lots of different ways you can draw the faces. There's different ways you can animate them, give them hands, feet. There's so many different options here. So the purpose of this video is to try to inspire you to start working on your own cute little mushroom people. So let's start by drawing out a mushroom. And like usual, let's just get some basic shapes in here. And when you're making a mushroom person, you need to make sure that the stem is a little bit wider. I have another video, or a blog post rather, on drawing mushrooms. And in those, the stem's a lot smaller. So we need to make sure the stem is big enough that you can fit some kind of a face on there if we're going to turn this into a mushroom person. So now we have some basic shapes, and I like to do this because it gets you to start making those initial marks on the paper instead of just staring at that blank piece of paper or canvas or whatever you're doing it on, which can be really intimidating. So by doing this, you start getting some lines drawn down and get some marks on that paper so it's not just a blank piece of paper anymore. And it also allows you to see just kind of how everything's going to be laid out, the size of it, the positioning on the paper. And I'm doing this so it fills up most of this paper. Excuse me, and I'm using an artist trading card today. I like to do my drawings on artist trading cards. And if you're not familiar with what they are, I'm going to add a link to our artist trading card freebie for beginners. That's just a short little what it is, how to do it, how to get started. But I really like doing things on the artist trading cards. So they're smaller. I can get them done in less time. I can put them in a portfolio. There's just a ton of benefits for me anyway for doing them. So we have some basic shapes. This is going to be the top, and we're going to change the shape a little bit, make it a bit more interesting. So I want this to come around and up and then curve around. This is kind of a personal preference for me with mushrooms. I like to see that curl and then the little bit of the underside of the mushroom. You don't have to draw yours that way. And then I want this to come up and then come down and meet over here. Now again, you can make this top of your mushroom different. You could make it shaped so it looks more like he's wearing a hat. I'm going to keep it more mushroom-like. And then for this part down here, I'm going to curve this out. So we want our lines to be interesting in the way they flow. We want them to look somewhat human-like, so it looks like a person, but we also want to make sure that they're interesting. We don't want them all just straight. It'll look more interesting if we curve them around a little bit. Okay, so this is pretty much it for the basic shape of the mushroom. We have how everything flows. And then this is going to be the underside of the mushroom, so we can add some details in here if we want. Put some lines. I'm not sure what those are technically called in a mushroom, but I'm sure you're all familiar with the lines on the underside of a mushroom, if you've ever seen a mushroom in real life. Now, you can erase as you go. I typically wait until the end so I can outline it and just use my big eraser and go over the whole thing. Now, for the face, like I said, there's just a ton of different ways that you can draw the face. You can make them more realistic. You can make them super simplified. And this is why I love doing drawing challenges, because typically what I would do is a series of drawings. And then each one I could try something different and experiment, play around with it a little bit. So now I'm just adding in just a few little details. I gave them kind of a yelling mouth, just some simplified eyes. And like I said, you could do this as simple or as detailed as you want. And of course, no mushroom is complete without its spots. And I think that's about it. I mean, mushrooms are pretty straightforward. There's not a ton of stuff to them, but you could also stylize this as much as you want and add as many details that you want to add. So the next step of how I do my artwork, you can do this different. I'm just showing you one way, like I said earlier. I like to outline my drawings in black because for this one, I'm going to be using markers. And I will probably end up doing a series of these where I'll try some different things. I'll do maybe some watercolors and play around a little bit with some different techniques and different ways of doing these. But typically what I do with most of my artwork is to outline it with this black Sharpie pen. And I like using the Sharpie pen over a marker because the markers, I feel like, leave a fuzzy edge. The markers will bleed into the paper a little bit more than what this pen does. So I just personally prefer to use these pens. And they work. If you want a heavier outline, you can go over it multiple times and thicken it up, which for some people could feel tedious, I guess. I find it very relaxing, so it doesn't bother me to do that. And I like that it gives me that sharper outline, not a fuzzy outline. So again, everything in art is just a personal preference. Some people say there's rules that you need to follow. I don't agree with that. Throughout history, the great artists, the reason that they are great or are considered great and have made an impact on art throughout history, those people typically went completely against the grain and broke all the rules and did something different. So if you study art history, I think you will agree that not following the rules has been very beneficial. So anyway, that's not really what this video is about, but I think it's good to try new things. It's good to educate yourself and know the fundamentals and know what the rules are before you start breaking them. I think that is very important. But I also feel like art is more about experimenting and exploration more than anything else. And the whole point of creating art, at least for me, is to have fun and enjoy it. So I'm just going to go in here now and darken up some of these lines. And again, like I said, this for me feels very relaxing. If you find it to be extremely tedious and it isn't something you want to mess with, you could use a marker or you could use a brush pen. So let me show you real quick. I want to show you these markers. So if I was going to outline this with a marker, I would use something like this. So I use these for most of my drawings. I have a lot of different markers, but this has a really pointed tip. And it would work great for outlining, but like I said, it tends to make it bleeds into the paper. And I'm sure part of that is the paper that I'm using. I'm using a heavyweight cardstock. What I do is I get them by the sheet. Obviously, I get a whole pack of them. And then I cut them down into the artist trading card size. And then I use this little paper punch and round off the corners. You can leave them. You don't have to round the corners off. I like how it looks with the rounded corners. And I can get, I think it's 10 artist trading cards out of one sheet of paper. And that's in that guide, the free guide that I spoke about earlier. That is in the description. You can go in there and you do have to put in your email address and it will get emailed directly to your inbox as a PDF file, but it has a guide in there, or a template, I guess you would call it, for how to get the most cards out of a sheet of paper. So I think it's 10, I believe. So typically what I'll do is I'll cut out a whole sheet of cards and then do the corners, round the corners off. And then I have a whole stack of cards. I can go through and make a bunch of drawings and I can just knock them out real quick one after another. So there is my outline. I went ahead and thickened that up a little bit. I did not go over some of these detailed lines and the little spots. I want to keep those a little bit thinner. So now what I'm going to do is take this big eraser. You could also use like one of these pink pearl erasers. What I like about this black eraser, which I happen to just have in my art supplies, I'm sure you're like I am if you've been doing art for any length of time and you have a bunch of random supplies you don't even know where they came from. But with these pink erasers, they get smudges on them, and then when you erase, the smudges will transfer to your paper. Where this eraser, although it makes a fairly decent mess when you use it, it's almost like you would call it like a self-cleaning eraser. Those pink ones, you can clean them, but you do have to clean them from time to time or they'll smudge up your paper. But this one, it makes a little bit of a mess, but it doesn't leave smudges because as you're erasing, it kind of crumbles apart. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's little eraser pieces all over, so, and it gets on your paper and whatnot. But it is nice because you don't have to worry about it smudging up your drawing and making a mess of things. So, okay, so that's it for the drawing itself. I need to figure out some colors for this, so I am going to grab some markers and I will be right back with you. All right, so I got some markers picked out. So what I do is I use these little scrap pieces from when I cut out my artist trading cards, and I can put the markers on here to see what they look like together. So I can pick out what colors I want to use. And this is, again, going to be, I'm going to show you the way that I do things. and it doesn't mean it's the right way or the best way. I'm showing you one way to do things. And then, as I said earlier, my goal in making these videos is really just to encourage you to take those first steps and get started. With my followers and students that I work with, the biggest thing that I hear more than anything else is, I don't know what to draw, I don't know how to get started, I want to make art and I never do. So my goal really is just, I want to see you getting started. I want to see you making some drawings, experimenting, trying new things. So these videos that I make and the blog posts that I write, more than anything, is just to try to get you to get started. And that's why I like to keep them fairly simple, because if I do a really in-depth detailed drawing that's above the beginner skill level, then I'm not going to be able to achieve my goal of helping you get started. So I tend to not do overly detailed videos. I like to keep them simple. And then what I really love is, in the Facebook group, we do weekly challenges every week, and I'll drop the link to the Facebook group in the comments as well, in the description box. We do challenges every week. There's a new theme every week, and the members of the Facebook group will post their drawings, and it's so rewarding to see how somebody can take one of my step-by-step tutorials and do a series of drawings using that as a starting point, and then coming up with, you know, usually they'll do, most of them actually do the series of 7, but sometimes they do more. So they'll come up with 6 or 7 or 8 different drawings, and they'll post them in the group. But like I said, it's just really rewarding to see what everyone does with these tutorials and how they change them up and make them their own and come up with some different ideas. And it's really fun to see that. So if that's something you think you might be interested in doing, and it's a nice community. People share their artwork in there. So now I'm going to do this top part, and I picked out a couple browns, and I guess I should mention, because I do get asked a couple questions about markers. So one of the things that people have asked is if you have to use the same brand of marker, and you don't, you can mix and match. Now these are all alcohol markers, and I have, so this is a Bic. These are old Prismacolors. I've had these like 15 years and they're still going. These touch markers I really like. I do have some Sharpie markers in here if I can get one. You know, just your regular colored Sharpie markers. I don't like those. They have too strong of an odor for me. I'm not sure why the Sharpies are so much worse than everybody else. I do have some of the Copic markers, but since I don't really do illustration work, I consider myself to just purely be a hobby artist, which just means that I do this for me. I do it for my own personal enjoyment. I like art. I've always liked art. I find it relaxing. So I don't need to spend $6 or $7 a marker or whatever the Copics are. You do want to try to stay away from the cheap store brand markers, or like, you know, the ones you can get at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or whatever you might have for local supply stores. Those kind of off-brand. They're okay, but not for the way that I work. I've had some kind of bad experiences with some of those cheap sets and kind of messed up the artwork a little bit. But you can get, it's again, everything's just so much a personal preference. If you can afford the Copic and that matters to you, I know a lot of artists swear by them. I personally don't see where they're any better than any of these other markers are. But like I said, I'm not doing professional art, so I don't really know. I'm not exactly sure what those benefits are. I guess I've never cared enough to really explore that or look into it. So I guess I should talk a little bit here about how I do these colors. So what I do is I use these cards and I find two colors that are similar to each other, but not too similar. You want to be able to notice that you don't want them to look exactly the same, or you kind of be wasting your time and your markers. But you want them to be a little bit different, but not so different that the colors don't blend together. For me, for how I work and how I'm coloring. So down here you can see what I do is I put the lightest color down first, and then I go over it with the darker color, and then I blend the edges together with the lighter color. And it will not ruin your marker. The darker color will not transfer to the lighter marker. That's something else I get asked quite a bit. You're not going to ruin your markers by doing that. There's also colorless blenders, which is actually what this Copic happens to be. I have other ones too, but it's just a clear, I'm assuming it's just alcohol. But you can use that to blend if you want instead of using your markers. Because obviously if I'm going back over it with this other marker, I'm using this marker more than I actually need to. That doesn't really bother me. I prefer to have fewer markers to keep going back and forth with, because what happens sometimes, it's happened to me many times, if you're not paying attention, you can grab the wrong marker and put it someplace you don't want it. So for me, the fewer markers I have to kind of go back and forth between, the better for me. Okay, so that's it for the colors. And over here I went out of the lines. That's one of the things I don't like about these Prismacolors, which, like I said, I've had these for like 15 years. I got them, they're probably one of the first sets I've gotten of markers when I very first started working on some graffiti drawings back when I was still teaching in the classroom. It was for a project I was doing with my middle school students, but it's got, most of these markers are dual tipped. It's fairly common. It's got this broad tip, which is good for big areas, but it's hard to stay in the lines. And it's got this really tiny tip, and to me that's always been kind of useless. They tend to dry out, but when you're trying to blend your colors, you need colors that go well together. So even though this is not a very good marker for doing artist trading cards because of the size limitations, it's the color I needed. So I make do. You go out of the lines, you clean up your outline a little bit, and all is good. So the next step is to add a background. And there's, of course, very varying methods to doing the background. And I'm going to, because this is a mushroom, I'm going to add this nice bright green, and then I will add some darker. You could do an actual scene in the background. Of course, you could leave the background just white. Sometimes what I'll do is take a nice bright color and do what I call a halo around the edge of the object. So I would go just like this around the edge and not color in the rest of it. I've done where I do a border on the outside, so it would just be on the outside edge and not on the inside at all. You could do outline the object and do the edges. I've done that before. I typically don't do a lot of full scenes, mostly because I feel like it kind of clutters up this main image. So this mushroom guy is the focal point, and by adding a background, it takes away from that a little bit, and that takes some skill to be able to do your backgrounds and have them complement your image rather than distract from it. And it's just, to be honest, not something I've really worked on. It's one of those things that's on my list that I would like to improve on someday. But like I said earlier, for me, the point of doing these videos and the reason I do them is because I like knowing that I'm helping people get started with their artwork. So the only thing left to do, and again, personal preference, you can do it or not. I like to use a white Jelly Roll pen and add some highlights just to break up these big areas of color. Again, just it's a personal preference. I like it better with a little bit of white highlights in there. And I'm literally just random looking at it, seeing where I think there's too much color that I want to be broken up. I'm not following any rules of lighting and shadows or anything like that when I make these. They're just fun little drawings. They're not illustrations. They're not realistic. You don't want to get too carried away with the highlights. But I do like to add just a little bit just to break it up. And for me, I like it better. If you don't like it, don't do it. It's your choice. You need to make sure as you're doing your drawings and your artwork that you're doing the things that feel right to you and that look right to you, and that's part of your style. So this black outline, the way I do my colors, the way I do my highlights, that's all part of my personal style. And you will definitely have your own style and your own set of rules and guidelines that you follow, and that's good. That's what you should be doing. If you don't like something, you shouldn't do it. Do what looks good to you. But that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. There's not a whole lot more to say. I probably will do a series of these because I want to see what I can do with them. This one is okay. It's not very exciting. Purpose, again, is just a starting point to get you going. So I will probably make a video of the drawing challenge that I'm going to do with these. And I will post that and show you. I'll most likely be doing 7 of them, and I'll post that. If you're interested in learning more about the artist trading cards, check out the free PDF that's in the description, and also the Facebook group if you think you're interested in joining that community. Whether you want to do the challenges or not, obviously it's not required. It's just something to get people inspired and motivated to work on something. So I will see you in the next video, and I hope you all do well on your art journeys and feel inspired to make some art today. Happy creating! Bye! Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe so you can get notified when new videos are uploaded. Today I showed you just one way to draw mushroom people. You can do different style mushrooms, different colors, different faces, so many different options for what you can do. And using the artist trading cards is a great way to save some time. I personally like doing a series of 7 drawings. It really helps me push my creativity and just getting some new ideas flowing. So think about giving that a try, and if you do, let me know in the comments, or just let me know in the comments that you watched the video. Let me know where you're at on your art journey. I would love to hear from you. So that's it for today. I will see you in the next video. Bye!